Well, hey there. You've stumbled upon the intersection of internet quandaries and psychological insight. Welcome to Veritas Views on AITA, where the quirks of the internet meet the expertise of Veritas Psychology Partners.
Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Michael McBride. I'm joined by our dynamic duo of psychologists.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gayle MacBride, and with me today, and it feels like every day, Dr. Daniel Kessler.
Yeah, that is true. Running a business together, it's like there's really no avoiding dealing with each other almost on the daily. So
Yeah.
we
had a reprieve from each other. Yeah, no. I think I even texted you yesterday.
Yeah. However, this podcast recording time is always a bit of a highlight because it gives us a chance to do the thing that I think that we both like best about working together as psychologists, because we get to argue and discuss and debate stuff around mental health and psychological stuff. So I actually really look forward to this meeting. So Michael,
well, I'd like to piggyback on this before we throw to our host, which is, not only do we enjoy this time together, I've worked with you for 11 years. I think I've said this to your face. I'm going to say it now, how much I enjoy these meetings, because I know that over the years, they've made me a better psychologist in a way that I haven't experienced with other clinicians. So I really do appreciate how you push, how I can hear your brain work. And it's just been really valuable. Thank you.
All right. Well,
gushy moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really.
It's out. We're done. On to something else.
That's funny that you guys are celebrating your 11th year then, because oddly enough, I just learned that the whole "Am I the Asshole" subreddit turns 11 in June. So
maybe we were meant to do this.
There we go.
Okay. And then speaking of anniversaries, this is probably going to air very close to the anniversary of us actually launching the business. We worked on it for a number of months up until, but we opened in June of 2023. And I suspect this is going to air around June of 2024. So there you go. We'll be celebrating a year anniversary with that as well.
Yeah. And for anybody who's new and they don't know what this is or what Am I the Asshole is, clearly they've had 11 years to figure it out, but missed the boat on it. Essentially, someone posts a scenario and asks the question, who's the asshole here? And that's what Dr. MacBride and Dr. Kessler will hopefully try to help us figure out. And also, if you're new, stick around through the end of the credits because we'll have a bonus conversation of some variety. But neither Gayle nor Dan know or have read this topic ahead of time. So this is what I got for you today. Am I the asshole for not cooking dinner for my husband while I was homesick?
No. All right. We're done. We're
out. That was a really short one, Michael.
Yeah,
wow.
We're done. No, we're done, right?
I expected a little bit more color commentary on that one.
Well, maybe you should tell us more details.
Yeah, tell us more detail.
All right. So I, 24-year-old female, called into work sick today because I have a fever, aches, and a sore throat. My husband, 26 male, went to work, and the only time he had to message me was to give me chores to do. While he was at work, I cleaned the entire house, mopped, cleaned the bathroom, did our laundry, etc. When he got home, I was in our bedroom putting away laundry, and the first thing he asked was what was for dinner. I told him I spent the entire day doing the list that he had sent me and I hadn't cooked yet. He got annoyed and said that since I was just home all day, I shouldn't be able to do a simple task such as cooking. I said we can order takeout or do something else, but he got upset and went to his mom's for dinner. I don't know what I did wrong. I didn't call into work to be a housewife. I stayed home because I was sick. Am I the asshole here?
This is going to be
This is really going to be short. Wow. Okay. The OP is 24 years old.
Yeah, she's 24. Wow. He's 26.
So, she's not right. No. You're homesick. She did a lot for being homesick. I would not have done that much, to be honest. If I was homesick, I was homesick. I am going to attribute her willingness to knock off these chores that her husband is sending her to being young and relatively inexperienced and maybe not having great boundaries. Honestly, I want this lady to be saying, no, I'm ill today. This is my day to rest and recover. I would like to have seen her say no to a lot more than just dinner.
Yeah. And this one is really problematic. And when I hear this, I actually worry about the relationship as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
This one worries me because if you know, and maybe I shouldn't be this judgmental of based on such little information. One of the things when we're working with people in our office, we don't want to just get a one-liner. Like we get to do that here, you know.
Right.
But this just sounds like my thought is if this dude is upset that she didn't make him dinner when she was homesick and annoyed enough to go to his mom's house for dinner, in what other way is he acting towards his partner that is just not okay? I am so very not okay with this.
Yeah, I mean, it really has layers of not okay. It's
Yeah.
the annoyance about not having dinner, but then leaving and going to his mother's is a total another just kind of F you layer to this. Ew.
Yeah, that's in it's we talked in our last one about shame.
Mm-hmm.
And to some degree, like what I hear him saying is, you're such a shitty partner that I'm going to go to my mom and
Yeah.
she'll cook dinner for me. Like, I have a hard time. Like, I do want to hear more because I don't want to judge their entire relationship based on this one incident. But I hear this and there's like red flags are popping everywhere with this one.
Yeah.
She's feeling like she needs to do stuff around the house. He's feeling like he's entitled to have dinner because she stayed home, ignoring the fact that she said, I'm talking too much here, but I'm going to go. Even if she didn't stay home sick, like let's say she took a mental health day from work and she decided to take a day for herself. He still doesn't have the right to walk through and go, where's dinner? Like, what the fuck?
Right.
Like,
even if, I mean, I could see a scenario in which a partner in this, I'm going to massage the facts a la Daniel Kessler here for a moment.
Please. Referencing our last.
Like I can see a world in which maybe, you've got a partner who's even a stay-at-home partner, right? That's what they do. They're going to be the homemaker and they're healthy, right? This is not a person who is asking for a mental health day or a physical health day, any of those things. And they've done laundry and they've cleaned the house and the partner comes home and goes, where's dinner? Like, I still have a problem with the demandingness of the dinner. This is, and it's not as if she did nothing. I mean, I would like to see partners, one who's maybe competitively employed and one who is the homemaker, have some grace around the tasks because the partner home often can't do all of the things. I mean, keeping a house is actually quite a lot of work. That division wouldn't be 50-50, but you need to maybe check your annoyance at the thing that didn't get done.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I have discussed this. We both have jobs, and we talked about like if one of us were a stay-at-home parent, the other one would reasonably have an expectation that most of the stuff around the house would get done by the stay-at-home parent.
Yes.
And let's say that were the case. And I love your example here. We're massaging the facts. Still, you come home and it's like, yeah, I had too much to do to make dinner tonight. The answer to that is, all right, what do you want to do about it? And she gives some offers. I'll go get cake takeout. I can, I mean, it's not like she was like, you are on your own, you son of a bitch, I mean, she was very like, yeah, but even if their agreement as a couple, and by the way, the example I gave would be an agreement as a couple, because it doesn't mean just because a person is a stay-at-home parent doesn't mean that they're obligated to do most of the work around the house. That's just a discussion my wife and I had, that if one of us were a stay-at-home parent, we would both have a reasonable expectation that person had as part of their task, because our kids are in school and there'd be lots of time, would be part of their task. But even if that were the case and the couple had agreed that was the case, he's still being a dick.
Yeah.
When you throw in that she has a job and she's sick.
Right. I mean, there's no excuse. And some couples really prefer to parse through the chores around the house in a very black and white kind of way. So, you might see one partner say, well, I will cook dinner if you mow the lawn, and I will do laundry if you're responsible for the trash. But even that kind of black and white thinking can get couples in trouble, because the moment I am not able to fulfill my XYZ duty, well, then fine, I'm just not going to do mine. And that's quid pro quo. And we know that in couples, quid pro quo is very problematic and really is going to cause problems in the long run.
And I don't think you meant to put it that way. I'm going to give you some, but I think the way you described it, I'll do the dishes if you'll do the lawn. I'll do the laundry if you'll do the thing. I have trouble with that. I had trouble with that framing. Like, I got a little bit like, oh, that sounds very quid pro quo.
Yeah.
And I think that
but I did mean to put it that way, because some couples function that way and they don't understand how problematic that is.
I like it rather. Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're not saying that's okay. You're saying it's
no,
not.
I'm saying that's the problem. When you divide it, so like, I will do this if you do that, then it becomes contingent and it falls apart. It's a recipe for resentment.
I think it's better. Like, you can frame it very, like you can have almost the same setup and frame differently. Like, these are the areas of my responsibility and these are the areas of your responsibility. And every couple has that, whether they've discussed it out loud, like, okay, your job is this and my job is this, or whether they just, like, it just sort of happens.
Yes.
Like they're just tasks that naturally fall to one or naturally fall to the other. And even without discussing it, frequently couples have found themselves in agreement about the tasks.
Yes,
that's
but
fine.
I don't think it's ever, when you're falling into a healthy pattern of back and forth, where one of the couple typically handles a particular task. There's often, I find, even some more subtle conversations that come along with that, right? Even later, like, oh, I noticed that I make all of the medical appointments and I really appreciate that you do all the IT stuff around the house. That might be representative of my household. But we still discuss it. Like, I know I usually make this appointment. I'm swamped today. Can you call and just get get the dental appointment on the books for us? I'd really appreciate it. And there has to be that flexibility and discussion at times about our typical roles.
And I think as we wander into discussions around division of labor in relationships, and with apologies for being a bit heteronormative here, most of I do work with same-sex couples, but the majority of the couples I work with are heterosexual couples. And I would say that the primary complaint I hear, and when I say complaint, I'm not talking about negative, like a valid, reasonable complaint. The primary complaint I hear from the female partner in a male-female relationship is like, I end up doing all of the things. And not just all the things around the house, but the bigger complaint we're getting these days, or I'm getting these days, is around you're already smiling, the mental load. Like, yeah, you're willing to do all these things, but I'm still the one who has to track when this is and track when that is and track when this is. It is possible that I may have even heard this within my own relationship more than once.
Right.
Not today, but and I think that this is something that couples frequently fall into the trap of one person handling all the mental load, and when that person handles the mental load, the other one is like, works for me, and really has to make conscious. I've wandered into something, MacBride, haven't I?
You triggered a memory of a moment that I might have had a mental load meltdown in a heteronormative relationship with male children in the household, if you'll indulge me a moment. I have this memory, and I don't remember how many years ago it was, but my children often come to me and they want me to fix, decide, help with, whatever it is. And, there is just kind of a bit of a preference for mom. And Michael, you're starting to smile. You might remember this. And my very capable, very hands-on partner was in the room with me. And one of my children asked me for yet another thing that his father was completely capable of doing, but the child asked me. Don't make me laugh, MacBride. And it was one of those nights I had just had it, and I looked at said child, and my response was, and I'm not entirely proud of this, but just because I have a vagina does not make me uniquely qualified to answer all of your questions. I am taking a break now. Ask your father. And I went upstairs. I found myself at this absolutely done point. And I think it is because in these heteronormative couples, mom is often the favored parent because she does so much of that decision making and load carrying that it is quite exhausting. And that for me is my moment of, oh, it wasn't a physical ask. It wasn't a task thing. It was just, you know, can I eat this thing? I don't know what it was.
Yeah. And I'd say that the bulk of my practice right now, aside from sleep, is couples and men who are in relationships with women. And this is the issue that comes up over and over and over again with men I'm working with, is around, like, they're coming in because they've recognized that there's a problem. And now they're trying to figure out, how do I have a relationship where my wife or girlfriend is happy with me? And the first thing that they do typically is they say, okay, honey, I want to be an equal participant in our relationship. What do you want me to do in order to do that? And it's a step. It's absolutely a step. And I see, Gayle, you're shaking your head already, because it's doing the things, but it's not carrying the mental load. And I will admit to guilt on that myself. That, like, okay, honey, what do you need done? And it's like, well, what I need you to do is to figure out what the fuck needs to be done. My wife actually wouldn't say that because she doesn't curse much. But like, I need you to figure out what to do, what the fuck to do on your own without having to come to me to do it, and then do it so that I'm not done. So that, one, you're carrying your load as a partner, and two, you're carrying the mental load.
Yeah.
It's
in fact,
it's a work in progress.
That one of the things I heard this week in my office was someone who had come in and was talking about her partner, and he had not only asked for time together, he had planned it. And she was like, oh, and just absolutely gooey in love with this idea that he not only wanted to spend time, he planned the evening. She didn't have to do any of that. Now, I think we're a little bit afield from our original posting question, because we don't even know if this couple has children. No. But I think, you know, what we have to, I mean, I think to your point, you know, this guy, we would like him to see him carrying some mental load. We'd like him to be attentive to his partner and her day that she is taking off, either for mental or physical health reasons, and not add to that load.
Right. No, I mean, clearly there's an asshole here. In my head, if we're going to move to judgment here,
I think that's reasonable.
She's obviously not the asshole here. And the husband, if this happened again, we don't. And one of the joys of working with couples is sometimes you hear a story from one and you're like, oh my gosh, and then you hear the story of the other and you're like, huh?
Yeah. Like
that does, but assuming that this is an accurate representation of what happened, and it sounds like it is, I just want to throw that caveat in. I really have trouble with the male. I don't know if it's a husband or boyfriend, and his expectations. Those are just completely ridiculous and out of line. And she is absolutely not the asshole here. And I want to sit down with them as a couple and talk about, like, I want to like invite them in and like sit down and like do some couples work. Maybe second, because at first I want to work with him. Because like, he needs to work on being a better partner.
Yeah.
To his wife or girlfriend, and he needs to do some work on behavior change. And the couples work of reparative work comes after he figures his shit out and figures how not to be a dick to his partner. Then they can do some reparative work. But first I want to sit down with him first, and then refer them as a couple to someone else once he's done that reparative work, or once he's done the work to make change.
If they're absolutely going to come in only as a couple, I want to spend some time with him exploring his thinking around why that would be okay as an expectation, whether that comes from family of origin expectations or something, right? Because if you don't know that person's perspective, you're not going to do a great job of changing it. And it's really hard sometimes for us, I think, normally, just as people, to sit down and be open to at least listening to a viewpoint that really opposes our own. And while we very strongly oppose his viewpoint, I don't think we're going to get very far with him unless we really explore where that viewpoint is coming from without validating it as accurate or okay, right? We do want to see change happen here, but I don't think we're going to do that without more deeply understanding where he's coming from.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
What did the internet say, Michael?
You'll be delighted to know the internet is definitely in agreement with you. They clearly said that she's not the asshole, and the only people who made a comment about her being an asshole were clearly like kind of sideways comments about that she was only an asshole to herself. And I was like, anyway, but yeah, I mean,
that's fair. Although I don't want to call her an asshole to herself, but yeah, she making some change there is a good idea for her.
Yes.
But they definitely raised lots of red flags. They were like, you need couples therapy. You need to walk through some of these things. There were interesting conversations that were, when you kind of dig into the comments a little more, people talking about like finding your way as a young couple. They were married at 24, 26, so they're assuming it's a relatively new marriage, but it doesn't indicate that really in the post. And so just kind of figuring out like some of those dynamics of like what the expectations are. The other question that kept coming up that we never got an answer to was, well, what are his sick days like? Does he do chores around the house?
That's a great question.
Does he make dinner?
Knowing
Does
men,
he get the man cold?
Knowing men, his sick days are like him laying on the couch staring at
I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
So there was that one.
We men folk definitely struggle more than what women do. But the only way I'm going to disagree with what the internet says, I don't know that I'd want to start with couples work, because if we start with couples work, we risk it feeling like it's just ganging up on him. And what I've experienced with men who are really screwing up in their relationships is that one-on-one, that time to like really hammer on his issues on a one-on-one before bringing it together as a couple breaks down some of the defensiveness that can happen if the focus is entirely on him and couples work when he hasn't yet gotten the realization of what a dick he is, or what I shouldn't say what a dick he is, how he's acting like a dick, because we don't want to label him, we want to label his behavior.
Yes.
So I want to start with individuals still.
I mean, I would agree. Typically, Dan, unfortunately, these guys are often really defensive. And when you only are in couple or only in individual work, they will often gloss over their behavior because they don't see it as problematic. Sure. So they don't rise to the level of that conversation. So, I think it's sometimes helpful to have a little bit of couples work going on while he's doing individuals so that we can highlight some of these problems that his partner is actually having, to accelerate some of that internal work. It can be helpful. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. We do risk this being a little lopsided, which is where couples work really gets kind of a bad rap, right? Where therapists come in and they really side with one partner. It's 2-on-1 and it doesn't feel good to anyone, as opposed to with this idea of making change. And the change I would like to see her make in couples work is to be able to set some boundaries with him kindly and firmly. And so we could balance that work out a little bit. This is the work that you need to do, and here's the work that she needs to do. And it's maybe not as strong for her, but it is important. And so then as a couple, they're both making change. They both have expectations.
Yeah. I'm working here and talking about that on the assumption, because most of the clients I'm seeing in my in our practice are men who are coming in saying, I need to make change.
Yes. And so I think that's a great person to see. This guy, I'm going to assume he doesn't think he needs to make changes.
Right. And in that case,
entitled here.
Yeah, in that case, what I see is likely happening, like I've seen a number of these, like you see them together as a couple for 2 or 3 visits, and then you're like, dude, you need to work on your own shit and then come back. And you end up referring them out for the individual work and then seeing them back again in 3 or 4 months. And that's how I see this one potentially progressing, unless he was already recognizing, which he clearly isn't in this particular very short snippet of their lives that we see. He's not there.
He feels a little blind to that.
Oh yeah, totally.
So.
The other thing I was glad to see the internet address was the importance of self-care. And, like if you need that sick time, whether it's mental or physical or whatever, like you need to take that time for that and not, and I'll admit that's something I struggle with. Like if I am off for whatever reason, I have a really hard time ignoring things that need to be done around the house. That's just my own thing, but that self-care part is really important to heal. So
Oh, sorry, go on.
No, please.
I insist. I'm going to be very Minnesota about this.
Oh, no, I forgot already.
Oh, shit. I think having others validate, not that you need it, but also to not validate, reinforce the importance of self-care is really helpful and healthy. It allows that space for that self-care to really take place. I can't remember if I told the story of self-care when I was on maternity leave here on the podcast or not.
Not that I recall.
Okay, so just really quick, this reminder of self-care. I was on maternity leave with our first child, and my dear mother-in-law called me, and I don't actually know if she remembers this conversation, nor does she realize that 15 years later, I remember the conversation. So she asked me, how was I doing? And I kind of lamented, I didn't get laundry done. I didn't clean up the house. I didn't get dinner made. This whole thing is reminding me of this conversation I had with her. And she said to me, not I quote, but close, did you feed my grandson today? Did you put him down for naps? Did you hug him and hold him? And, of course, yes, all of those things. And she said, that's what your time at home is meant to be doing, is you're meant to be taking care of my grandson. And I was like, wow, that was really appreciated. It was such a wonderful reminder that none of those other wifely duties, and I say that with a little bit of a cringe, but I know, but you know what I mean? Like, okay, partner
Let's
duties.
say none of those stay-at-home parent duties. How about that?
Okay, thank you.
Better.
None
so
of
we're
those
not genderizing it.
Thank you. None of those stay-at-home parent duties need to apply, because that wasn't the purpose of my leave from work. My purpose was to recover from the birth of the child and to begin that child's life in a really wonderful way. And that was my primary focus. And so 15 years later, I appreciate that story. I think about it often. And I love that she helped me gain that perspective.
Wonderful. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you both for another riveting debate and a glimpse into the collective conscience of the internet. Remember, morality is often shades of gray and not just or black or white.
Truth is strange. It's stranger than fiction. You can't make this shit up, man. And why would you want to?
Yeah, join us again next week while we wade through another intriguing discussion of who the asshole is. And of course, I'm going to say, Michael always says this, but follow, share, do all the things that make people find us on the internet. We've got half a season right now out. So you can binge the shit out of this now if you want to. All right.
Yeah, everything Dan said, ditto. And stick around through the credits for our bonus conversation.
You can follow Dr. Dan Kessler at Dr. Dan Kessler and Dr. Gayle MacBride at Dr. G. MacBride. Oh, and you can find them both at veritaspp.com. Credits. Tickling the Ivories, Matthew Reddington. Art, production, and design, bringing this show together with flair and finesse, Michelle Love. Recording and editing, turning chaos into something worth sharing, Michael MacBride. Intro, outro, I'm Kelly Buttrick, a VO talent who just happens to be Dr. MacBride's cousin. Cats, CJ, Linus, Sadie, and Griffin. Hosting by whomever lost the coin flip. Interruptions by all their children. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapist-client relationship. If you believe you may be experiencing a mental health issue, please seek the assistance of a qualified mental health professional. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call or text 988 from anywhere in the U.S. to be connected to Crisis Mental Health Services.
All right, as promised, here's that bonus conversation.
So, Dan, you and I have been consulting and talking for over a decade now.
Yep.
And one of the things that struck me early on in our relationship was how you defined whether or not a symptom needed treatment. And you talked about distress and impairment. Do you remember the example that you often gave with distress and impairment, how to break that down and help people understand? Okay.
No recollection. But if you
I'm so
me, it'll come back.
It will. And I felt like it was sort of apropos of this podcast. You talked about distress and impairment having a fear of cats versus being an asshole. Do you remember this?
Fear of tasks?
Cats, meow.
Fear of cat. Yes.
Can you
Yes.
share that? Are you willing to share that with us?
Sure. And I'm going to share it without mentioning the person's name, although I think they have long passed at this point. But we had a family friend, and this family friend was one of my mom's dearest friends, and she was absolutely abso-bug-fuck-lutely terrified of cats, and she would call ahead, because this is before cell phones, and like, where's the cat? And my mother would dutifully say, we'll put her in the basement. And she'd go, okay. And then she'd come to the door, she'd ring the doorbell, and she'd go, where's the cat? Sylvia, where's the cat? And my mother would dutifully say, she's in the basement. And she'd go, can she get out? And my mother would lie to her and say, no, she has no idea how to get out. This is a Siamese cat. They're brilliant fucking cats. And she can get out. But my mother would say, because it didn't happen often, I would say, no, she can't get out. And she'd go, okay, fine, thank you so much. And she'd come in the house and she'd spend the time at the house, and we'd have a lovely visit, and then she'd leave and we'd let the cat out. And the point of this is that while this was a fear, and this was and she really was scared, it didn't actually, like, it, I wouldn't necessarily treat her for her phobia, because she went to other people's homes, she lived a normal life, with the exception of asking 2 questions at the door and 1 question by the phone beforehand. And I don't, and if it changed her life, if she couldn't go to the store, if she couldn't visit with friends for fear of running into a cat, if she couldn't watch a show or for fear of running into cats somewhere, we would want to treat this. But given that the impairment was only 3 questions that took less than 30 seconds total, I wouldn't have necessarily treated her for her phobia, as severe as her phobia was, because it didn't impact her life. It didn't cause a functional impairment. Now, if she wanted to one day own a cat, we would treat. But as it was, I wouldn't treat her. So there's the difference between impairment or disorder that is absolutely phobia, and whether it was impairing enough to necessarily demand treatment. Is that the story you're talking about there?
Yes, but you've left off the second half.
Oh shit, I left something out?
Distress.
Well,
it has to meet both distress and impairment.
Right.
And so you would.
But her level of distress.
Talk about the flip side of having a characteristic of, perhaps I'm an asshole, but it doesn't bother me.
Right. Oh, I see.
It causes no distress. It might impair my functioning, but it doesn't distress me that I'm an asshole. So, and that really is the insight piece that maybe we were talking a little bit about today in the episode is, I behave in this way. It doesn't bother me. So therefore, I'm not going to present for treatment. I'm not really in a place where I am considering change. And so that both have to be present in order to provide treatment. And then again, in today's episode, we would see maybe doing a couple of visits around couples work to help the individual see that this is actually a problem and create a little bit of that distress so that they could see the impairment and be willing to develop the willingness to work on the impairment.
And here we start wandering into this idea of ego-syntonic versus ego-dystonic. Ego-syntonic behaviors being things that I'm okay with about myself, and ego-dystonic, things that I'm not okay with myself. And that is an impairment for a lot of people to treatment, is that, as you mentioned, like this particular family friend of mine wasn't troubled by her fear of cats. So she wouldn't choose to seek treatment, even if I thought it was important to. And when we talk about couples, and you referenced this earlier, Gayle, with and we're going to pick on men here a little bit. It's more often the case when men are acting like the OP's husband was acting like he has to make the decision that it's a problem in order to seek help. And if his behavior is ego-syntonic, he doesn't necessarily want to change. And frequently in these couples where she's doing a lot and he's not doing much, change means it gets easier for her and harder for him.
Ooh, I like that. Will you say that again, please?
Yeah, sure. Change means it's easier for her, but harder for him. And sometimes when couples are having problems like this couple presumably is having, like she is overjoyed to be coming in and getting help, and he's not, because life doesn't get easier for him if he gets help and becomes a better partner. It actually gets a little harder for him. His relationship gets better, but his life gets a little, there's more work in his life. For her, the relationship gets better, and there's less work in her life. So in this case, like, he may be motivated by the improved relationship, but he doesn't, but he has a disincentive to getting help in that he has to do more stuff. She's purely motivated because she gets a better relationship and does less stuff. And that's where some pushback often comes with the partner that needs to change. Wish I said this earlier.
I know, it's brilliant shit. You know what? Yeah. Good thing most of our listeners actually listen to the whole episode, so they'll have caught this.
There you go. All right.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and check us out next week with another conversation. Bye.
We love hearing from you, so please review us on Apple, Spotify, or, well, wherever you're listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please review, like, and follow. Also, give it a share. This helps us reach more listeners.